Okay, and there's the awkward silence while I wait to make sure that we are actually live because I think there are a couple of seconds of delay. So welcome to everyone who has joined us today. And this is just kind of a supplementary session. You've been hearing about course selection. And so this session is supplementary, some issues that SAS students may wish to consider when they're doing their course selection. My name is Wendy. I'm one of the advisors at Student Accessibility Services. I'm joined by Tanya and Patty, two of our other advisors, whom you won't see. You will mostly see and hear me. You might hear Tanya or Patty a little bit, but you'll mostly be looking at me in terms of the presentation. There will be opportunities for questions, but you can, of course, enter them in the chat as I'm going along, and Tanya or Patty will get those answered for you. If somebody has a question that probably is going to be common to a lot of folks in the room, Tanya or Patty will shout it out to me and I'll answer it here during the presentation. Okay, so let's get started. All right, so just to give a quick overview of what I'm going to be talking about today. First, just a review of what does Student Accessibility Services do and who we support. Second, just a reminder about how to register with SAS. If this is the first SAS-related event or thing that you've done in the transition to university, then there'll be some steps for actually getting connected with SAS. If you haven't followed those already, we'll review them for you. Talk a little bit about reduced course load. That's really sort of the main thing that we'll be talking about today in terms of SAS students and course selection. A little bit about part-time versus full-time in terms of your academic load, and then some financial considerations. Now, some of these things that we're talking about, you may start talking about here with us at SAS, but we might also be offering a referral. You know, that's an excellent question for your program counseling office or the financial services office or another particular office on campus. And then other course selection issues, which mostly will be directed to the program counseling offices. Okay, so just first of all, what does SAS do? And the short answer to that question is that we help to address structural barriers. So things about the way that particular courses are set up or the way that academic policies work that might be challenging for someone when a disability is affecting the student's functioning. And what we mean by that is, you know, how is your disability interfering with all of the jobs of being a student? So getting to class, learning your information in class, completing your assignments and your tests, following the relevant policies in your courses and overall in your degree, understanding what those policies are asking you to do. So all of that sort of thing. If a student's disability is interfering with that, that's where SAS is going to step in. Now, I want to make a little bit of a note on language. We've seen that some people aren't really comfortable with the term disability, and I want to tell you that when we're using the term disability, we're using it more in the legal sense to say, listen, something is going on with this person in terms of their health or the way that they learn that may affect them in an academic environment, may present some barriers, and that it is appropriate then to provide this person with academic accommodations. So that's what we're saying when we use the term disability in this setting. So we determine and help to arrange academic accommodations, and we work closely with students and instructors to collaboratively determine what's needed. So it's not a case where we're going to decide everything and just tell you, okay, here are your accommodations. If you are an incoming student, we are going to want to hear from you. Of course, we review your documentation, but we want to hear from you about what your questions and concerns are, what accommodations that you've had in the past that have been helpful for you. We might not be able to duplicate exactly all of your accommodations, but we'll talk with you about other ways to address your concerns, because accommodations will vary based on individual disability needs. You know, sometimes students will come in and they'll say, well, my friend gets this accommodation. And we'll say, well, that might be because your friend's disability works a little bit differently from yours, or it shows up differently from yours. So it's based on individual needs, but it's also based on course demands. One of the key things about accommodations is that we're not changing the academic requirements of your courses or of your degree. You are going to meet the same requirements as a SAS student as a non-SAS student would meet to get credit for that same course or to finish that same degree. So we need to be careful. There are some accommodations that we can't put in place because that would actually change the requirement of the course. So who does SAS support? We support students in all of these different disability categories. So students who have learning disabilities, ADHD, students who are autistic, students who may have injured themselves, gotten a concussion, or have a chronic illness, including this is where we see most of our students with what we would call temporary disabilities. So a temporary disability might be, you went skiing over reading week and you broke your arm, and unfortunately you broke your arm on your dominant side. So now it's going to be more of a challenge for you to do school because you've got a broken arm, the hand that you write with. So what are you going to do? So those students also can come to us for support. Now, if you're already registered with SAS for a different reason and you fall skiing and you break your arm, or you get a concussion or something like that, that is something that you can you should let your advisor know, this is what's happened. I may need some support around this as well, as a temporary disability, in addition to the reasons why you were already registered with SAS. All right. Before I go on and talk too much more, any questions so far, Tanya, Patty?
Everything looks good, Wendy. Thank you.
Good so far? Okay, excellent. Just a quick review of the steps in registering with SAS. And some of you who are listening right now, you've probably already given us paperwork. You've probably already done the steps that I'm about to tell you that you need to do. So if you've done them, and if you've received feedback from us saying, thank you very much for your documentation or for your intake form, that's fine. This slide is just for the people who maybe this is your first connection with SAS and you're wondering, well, how do I actually get registered? How do I actually get my accommodations? So just to quickly go over those steps. First, you want to submit a new student intake form. And if you take a look in the chat, Patty is going to post a link to our website and to the section of the website that is useful information for students who are brand new to us. And so there'll be a link there to the new student intake form, which is the first form you submit when you're registering with SAS, just tells us a little bit about you. And you, the student, can fill out that form. There's no input from a professional required for that particular form, the new student intake form. The professional input is going to come on the next step, which is submitting documentation. And at that link that Patty's going to post in the chat, you'll also be able to see our documentation guidelines. Some of the documentation requirements depend on what sort of disability you're asking for some help with. So you can review those documentation guidelines, and I'll have our contact information at the end. So if you're reviewing those and you have any questions, you can certainly get in contact with us. The third step is to attend orientation. So after you've submitted a new student intake form and/or your documentation, those are important steps because that says to us, hey, this is a person who's going to need more information throughout the summer about what's going on with SAS, events that we're having, that sort of thing. So after you have connected with us by submitting some paperwork, it is really important to watch your University of Guelph email. That is the email that we're going to be using because that's the email we'll use to communicate with you after you've already started your classes. So we want to get you used to checking that regularly right now and to communicate with university staff and faculty using that email address instead of a Hotmail or a Gmail or something like that. So if you've given us paperwork, please make sure that you are checking your University of Guelph email account, and you'll have some information there about attending our orientation, which helps you to get more familiar with how SAS works, the things that we do, the things that we need you to do, and how everything all fits together. And then the fourth piece is meeting with your advisor. And again, you'll get more information about how and when that is going to happen when you start taking those steps to respond to the questions that we're asking about, which aspects of orientation are going to be most useful to you. There are some choices in there, and then we do ask you for some information so that we can help you book an appointment with your advisor. So that first meeting with your advisor is very important because that's when the advisor is going to hear from you about what are your concerns, what are your needs, and that's the important piece of that collaborative approach. So until you've done all of these steps, it's not possible to put accommodations in place, right? Because we need the information that comes from all of these steps. So we'll see people sometimes get to step 2. They'll give us a new student intake form and documentation. They'll say, there, good, done, registered with SAS. No, not yet. There are a few more steps that you need to do. And again, I know I just said this, but any questions coming out of those registering with SAS steps?
So yes, Wendy, with regards to when students submit their documentation and their new student intake form, how do they confirm whether it's been received or not?
So what will happen is you will get an email message from SAS Intake, and that will come again to the University of Guelph email. And depending on what you submitted, it'll say, thank you very much for submitting your, say if you just submitted a new student intake form, it'll say, thank you very much for submitting your new student intake form. We're going to need some documentation. Here are the documentation guidelines. If you've submitted documentation, then the email will say, thank you for submitting your documentation. It's been reviewed. And then the next piece will say either, yes, we have everything we need. The documentation is current and valid and has the information that we need. Or it will say, you know what, this is enough for us to get started with, but just so you know, we're going to be asking for some more documentation. Here's some more information about that. Or the email will say, actually, this documentation isn't sufficient to get started with. Here's what we're going to need. So either way, when you submit paperwork, you'll get an email to your University of Guelph account with further information and next steps and just confirming what we've received and what we're still waiting for.
Thanks, Wendy. And then I also just wanted to point out with regards to the orientations. So we do have a number of sessions that happen throughout the summer, and students are going to be getting emails, an email that will give them directions to the Start Accessible website, which lists all of our events, including ones like this throughout the summer that they can attend. So just as Wendy said, make sure you're checking your UofG email for those updates.
Right, excellent. Thanks, Tanya. All right, so we'll go more specifically to talking about course selection, because that's what you've heard from student life and the academic side of the house about today. And the biggest consideration that we have, that we want SAS students to sort of think about as they're, especially as they're coming into their first year, is this idea of taking a reduced course load. So most of the publications and the information that's coming from the University of Guelph about being a new student and selecting your courses is going to be based on the assumption that you're going to take 5 courses in a semester. 5 courses in a semester would be considered 100% of a full course load. And the idea there is if you take 5 courses per semester for 2 semesters for 3 years for a general degree or 4 years for an honors degree, then you'll be finished. Now I'm here to tell you, hardly anybody does that, and especially hardly anybody that's registered with SAS does that, right? There are a lot of reasons why students may set their course load at less than 100%, a lot of very good reasons, and it's something that we really encourage our new incoming students to consider. So the first thing we want to say is many students don't even realize that a reduced course load is allowed. And that's because, again, a lot of that communication is coming through based on, okay, so you'll have your 5 courses in the first semester and they'll look like this. And then when you go to second semester, it'll be these 5 courses. And that's sort of set up as kind of the default. So first we want you to know that it doesn't have to be 5 courses. If there are some reasons why you're thinking, I don't know, that might be a little bit overwhelming, certainly you can do less than 5, and especially in your first couple of semesters, that's encouraged. Now, SAS students particularly are encouraged to consider a reduced course load, and that's because on top of all of the regular things that you have to take care of when adjusting to university. So the expectations are going to be different. My class hours are going to be different. How I interact with my professors is going to be pretty different from how I interacted with my teachers. You know, the fact that when you're in high school, if there's an assignment that you have due, your teacher is probably going to remind you every day or every other day, you know, be working on this, make sure that you're making progress because here's when it's due. Where at university, if you have an assignment due, it's printed in the course outline. The professor may mention it in lecture, but they may not because it's in the course outline and the expectation is you've read it, you know what's in the course outline, you know when your due dates are. Now, if some of you are worried about that and thinking like, I do not keep track of deadlines very well because of something that happens with my disability, that is definitely a conversation to have with your SAS advisor, but it's also potentially a reason to consider a reduced course load. We see a lot of times where students have tasks that they need to do, and they are capable of all of those tasks individually. If that was the only task you had to do, you'd be absolutely capable of it. But if you have too many of those tasks and you get overwhelmed and it doesn't all fit, then it's hard to get anything done, right? And so that's what we don't want to see happen. So again, we really encourage that reduced course load just to help with the adjustment. Sometimes we even say, you know what, adjusting to university is a course in and of itself, or it's the equivalent weight to a course in and of itself. And then, in addition to all of the, transition to university issues, students registering with SAS also have that additional set of questions about, well, how do accommodations work at university? How do I get my accommodations? Who needs to communicate about my accommodations? What processes do I need to follow? And so there is some extra work and some extra stuff to pay attention to, and you want to leave yourself room for that. So again, that's another reason why a reduced course load is encouraged as at least a consideration. And again, just creating more time and space to adjust to the challenges of learning at university. That's what happens when I edit my slides the morning of. I apologize. Questions, troubles, concerns?
I think we're okay right now. Yep. No, I think we're good.
Okay. All right. Oh, forgot a point there. So this is important. There is no set time by which you must complete your undergraduate degree. I think like ages and ages ago, there might have been a rule that it was 10 years or something like that. But I mean, even at that was 10 years, right? And so there's nobody that's going to say, hey, you started in September 2022, let's go, you got to be out of here, right? So students may take a reduced course load. For some students, the correct number of courses that is going to allow them to feel healthy and balanced and be able to meet all of their academic demands. For some students, that number is 2 courses or 3 courses or 4 courses. I would say, in my experience, 11 years as an advisor, students who are taking 5 courses are very much the exception rather than the rule. And we sit in front of a lot of students as advisors who say, well, I don't want to be the only one not taking a full course load. And we say, trust us, you won't be. Maybe nobody's talking about it and saying like, I decided to take fewer courses because I'm managing this or this, or just because that's how I wanted to set up my schedule. A lot of times students don't talk about it, but a lot of students do consider it, and a lot of students do decide to pursue academics at a reduced course load. It's absolutely okay. There's no problem with that whatsoever. Now, because we talk a lot to students about reducing course load and the benefits of reducing course load, we get this question all the time. Well, what's considered a part-time student and what's considered a full-time student? And the answer is a little bit annoying because the answer is it depends who's asking, because different organizations and different entities have different definitions of part-time versus full-time. So the University of Guelph defines a full-time student as anyone taking 2.0 or more credits in a semester. Now I say credits, not courses, because, sorry, I took that point out. I say credits and not courses because most courses at University of Guelph are worth half a credit, so 0.5 credit for one course. Now there are some courses that are worth 0.25 or 0.75 or 1.0 credits, but most single courses at the University of Guelph are worth 0.5 credit. So if you're looking at 2.0 credits, that's 4 courses, usually, unless you have one of those ones that's differently weighted. Okay, so the University of Guelph defines a full-time student as anyone taking 2.0 credits or greater, and that is true whether or not you're registered with SAS. We get questions a lot that like, okay, well, I know I'm going to be part-time if I drop this 4th course, but is it different because I'm an SAS student? As far as the university is concerned, no, it's not different, because the university basically asks, well, for how many courses are you paying tuition? Okay, you're paying tuition for that many courses, therefore you're a full-time student or you're a part-time student. OSAP has different definitions of part-time and full-time, and part of what it depends on for OSAP is, have you submitted paperwork to OSAP to identify yourself as a student with a disability? And it's important to note that that is different paperwork than you would submit for SAS. I'm sorry to say that because that becomes a lot of paperwork that you have to keep track of, but it's important for students to realize that if you're registered with SAS, that doesn't mean that OSAP knows that you're a student with a disability unless you've also submitted paperwork to OSAP to make that clear.
Okay, Wendy, we have a couple of questions if I can interject.
Sure.
Okay, so I guess the first question is, does a student need to meet with their SAS advisor to choose to do a reduced course load before they can do course selection, or can they choose their courses before meeting with their advisor?
So you can absolutely choose your courses before meeting with your SAS advisor. Someone that you may want to meet with, though, in terms of choosing your courses, meet with or speak with, would be your academic program counseling office. I'm going to be talking a little bit more later in the presentation about what the academic program counseling office can help with. But basically, if there are questions about what courses should I be taking, or, you know what, I am going to do a reduced course load. I'm going to do 3 courses instead of 5 in my first semester. So which 3 of those 5 should I be taking? So those are all questions for your academic program counseling office. So to circle back to your question, yes, you can do course selection before talking to your SAS advisor. If you wanted to get some input, and this is true in, going into your first semester or going into other semesters once you're already a University of Guelph student, if you're sort of still considering it and wanting to get some input, and what would it look like to take a reduced course load? How would that change the way that I manage my disability concerns? That sort of thing. Absolutely, that's a great conversation to have with your SAS advisor. But in terms of like, well, what courses am I supposed to take and when am I taking them? And what if I'm only doing 3 in a semester? Those would be your academic program counseling office.
Thanks, Wendy. And if a student does do a reduced course load, when would they pick up those courses?
So you have a couple of different options. So some students choose to also take courses in the summer. So the summer is an academic semester. There are fewer course options available, but it's certainly gotten more robust and there's more available than there used to be. So some students will choose to, you know what, maybe I'm going to do 3 courses in the fall, 3 courses in the winter, and then maybe a couple of courses in the summer as well. Now that's something you really do want to be talking to your program counseling office about, because they will have some information on how to set up that sequencing based on, well, you know what, this course is offered in the summer, so you could take it then, where this one is really only offered in the fall. So, if you're considering reducing your course load, maybe hang on to that one because it's only offered in the fall. This one you can probably get in the summer. So again, that's the academic program counseling office can have that conversation with you. The other thing, and this goes back to what I was saying before about there's no time limit on finishing a degree. So if a student has gone through and maybe they're taking 2 or 3 or 4 courses in a semester, just because they get to their 4th year doesn't mean, okay, you're in 4th year, you got to be ready to graduate. No, you might get to your 4th year and you're not quite ready to graduate because you've done some reduced course load. That's okay. You just sign up for your next semester and you keep going until you are done, right? So a lot of students will finish in 4.5, 5 years, 5.5, 6 years, some longer, because you may take a reduced course load in particular semesters. You may decide to take some time completely away from school. Students will come in, you know what? I'm tired, or, my disability's really been flaring up lately. I've been having a lot of challenges with it. I think I just need a break. What would happen if I took a semester off? Yep, you can do that. Again, those are situations where you want to make sure you're talking to your academic counselor. A lot of students do talk to their SAS advisor when they're considering taking a semester off. And you just want to make sure, if you were in the semester to begin with, like if you started the semester and then went, oh, maybe not. You want to make sure that you take care of everything, getting those courses dropped, making sure they're not on your transcript, that kind of a thing. But to circle back and answer the question about, well, when do I do it if not 5 courses in a semester? It could be summer courses. It could be continuing to take courses after you've gotten to, just because you're in your 4th year of a 4-year degree doesn't mean you need to be done, because 4-year degree is based on the assumption that you're taking 5 courses every semester. If you're not, then it's not going to be a 4-year degree, and that's okay. There's no problem with that.
And having said that, thank you for that explanation. That was great, Wendy. Is if the student is, does that apply the same to like a co-op, if students in co-op, or if they're applying to like a medical school or OVC, Ontario Veterinary College in the future? How does a reduced course load affect that?
So that's an excellent question, because we get a lot of students who come in and tell us, you know what, I'd love to reduce my course load, but I can't because I'm in co-op. Or I'd love to reduce my course load, but I can't because I want to apply for the Ontario Veterinary College, and they require a full-time course load. Please ask those questions to your SAS advisor, because, for example, with co-op, you can do a reduced course load, but we need to make sure that co-op is aware that that's something that you want to do, and that they have some input in helping you plan how your semesters are going to be set up, right? And for example, Ontario Veterinary College, yes, they have a requirement for full-time semesters, but it doesn't apply to every single semester. And probably if you are a first-year student in a program that eventually wants to go to Ontario Veterinary College, first couple of semesters should not be a problem at all to do a reduced course load. It's when you start taking those courses that I'm actually going to be using this for my application. I need this particular course in order to be able to apply to this program. That's sometimes when that full-time requirement starts coming into play. So if you're thinking, I'd really like to reduce my course load, but I can't because of co-op or because of this program that I want to apply for later, please ask that question, because there may be an exception or there may be a way to set that up so that you can reduce your course load, but there are just some different steps that you may have to take.
And would a reduced course load impact residents?
No. To think about that one for a minute. I believe it's 3 or more is nothing you need to do. One of my advisor colleagues, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think if it's 3 or more, there's nothing you need to do. I think if it's less than 3, I believe that there just needs to be a conversation with housing to say that, you know, is SAS supporting this student for a reduced course load? And then the conversation happens from there.
Thanks, Wendy. I'll let you keep going. Sorry, I keep interrupting.
No problem. That's great. No, and basically with residents, what they're really trying to make sure of is, you know, they don't want to have a situation where someone could very well be in 5 courses. There would be no problem with them being in 5 courses, but they're in 2 and they're using all their extra time to like cause a disturbance to people who are trying to study. That's what housing is trying to avoid. So if there's a very good reason why you say no, like actually 2 courses is the appropriate course load for me with everything else that I'm managing, then that might just have to be a conversation, but it can certainly be one. All right, and so again, just as I'm looking at this slide, if the question is part-time versus full-time, the answer is it depends who's asking. So please ask the question if there is a concern. You know, if you have, for example, a scholarship that's from an externally funded source and it says this is only available to you if you are a full-time student. Sometimes they will have a consideration process where, for example, if you get a letter from Accessibility Services that says, yes, this student is taking 3 courses, but that should be considered full-time for them based on their disability-related concerns. Some organizations will accept a letter to that effect in order to let you reduce your course load. So if you're thinking, I'd like to reduce, but I'm stuck because of this particular scholarship or this particular program or whatever, please ask the question. Sometimes we can create some flexibility. The other thing that people want to know about when they're reducing course load, and sometimes parents want to know about this too, is like, okay, well, what about the money? What happens with the money situation when I'm reducing a course load? So I'm actually going to put all 3 points on this slide up at the same time, because I'm looking at it now and I'm realizing this slide might have made more sense in the opposite order. But anyway, so if you are taking a course load of fewer than 2.0 credits, which is usually 4 courses if we're on the everything is worth half thing. If you are in fewer than 2.0 credits, you're just charged for the amount of credits that you're taking. If you're taking 0.5 credit, 1 course, that's what the university is going to charge you for. If you're taking 1.0 credits, either 1 double weighted course or 2.5s, they're going to charge you for just the 1.0 credit that you're in. If you're taking 1.5, same thing. They're going to charge you for 1.5 credits. The difference comes when you get to that 2.0 credits, that full-time designation. Okay, so non-SAS students taking 2.0 credits will pay full-time tuition as full-time students. The catch is the full-time tuition amount is actually the amount that you would pay if you were taking 2.5 credits, which is that 100% of a full course load. So non-SAS students taking 2.0 credits, if you think about it one way, it's like, well, wait, are they paying for a fifth course that they're not actually taking? And so what we've done with that in terms of SAS students is we realize that there may be a very good disability related reason why 4 rather than 5, or I should say 2.0 credits rather than 2.5 is the correct number of courses for this person to manage. So SAS students taking that 2.0 credits can request an adjustment. You'll hear it talked about as either a tuition release or a tuition waiver, and that basically depends on the documentation and paperwork that you've submitted, whether it's something that, we put it in once and we never have to renew it again, or do we put it in and we have to renew it based on when we're asking you to renew your documentation. But in any case, no matter what we call it, what it is an adjustment so that you are only paying for the 2.0 credits in which you are enrolled. And that is, if that's applicable to your situation, it's very easy to get. What you need to do is just to make sure that you're having a conversation with your SAS advisor, can be in, your first appointment, just to say, yeah, actually, I think I am going to do a reduced course load. I think I'm going to do 2.0 instead of 2.5. So let your advisor know that, but it's something that we automatically watch and listen for as well when we're doing a first appointment with a student, to look at their documentation. And in most cases, your documentation will make you eligible for that tuition adjustment if it's applicable to you. If you've decided that, 3 courses is my magic number, and I'm going to do 3 courses that are worth 0.5 each, so 1.5 credits, well, that's how much the university is going to charge you for. So that tuition adjustment wouldn't be necessary. But if you've decided, yep, my magic number is 2.0 credits, then make sure your advisor knows that so we can make a note on your file for that tuition adjustment. I know there's got to be a question there.
Sorry, Wendy, I forgot to unmute myself. Who would you need to talk to about getting the tuition adjustment?
You would talk to your advisor about that.
That's the
Sorry, your SAS advisor.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Okay,
there's a general question here, Wendy. Sorry, that's
okay.
Just sort of outside of things that I think should be kind of addressed. Is there a cutoff period to apply for SAS?
Is that question in terms of like the summer, or in terms of right now, or in terms of during a regular academic year?
I'm just thinking if you can sort of address our deadlines and then why it's important to connect. That might be.
As soon as you can, yes. So some of you may have seen a published deadline of June 15th. And you might be kind of going, ooh, I didn't know that was a thing. Is that going to be a problem? So the June 15th deadline, the reason why we put that in place is we said, if we are going to be able to guarantee that we're going to have accommodations in place for you from the first day of your degree studies, then we need your paperwork by June the 15th. If you're not going to be able to have all your paperwork and documentation to us by the 15th, that's still okay. You can still give it to us, and please still do as soon as possible. Just our note there is there may be a little bit of a delay in getting some of the accommodations set up, just because of that June 15th deadline is giving us time to, if you need updated documentation or if we need more information, it's giving us time to say, hey, yep, we'll be happy to help, but we need some more information. So if you've seen June 15th, that's important, that's intentional, but it's not the be all and the end all. So that if you miss it, please just get us your paperwork as soon as possible so that we can review your documentation and let you know next steps for getting accommodations in place. Okay, so basically when to connect with SAS as soon as possible. And when it happens late, like this is not going to be anybody here because we're having this conversation now. But we always do find that, we're getting emails in late August or even very early September from folks saying, I had accommodations in high school and I think it might be a good idea to get set up with SAS at university. How do I do that? And we are happy to help you at that point. But if we're hearing from you in the end of August or the beginning of September, we're not going to be able to have your accommodations in place by the beginning of your studies, because that's just not enough time to, again, secure the right documentation, make sure you have an appointment with your advisor, that kind of a thing. So on this timeline, the sooner that you can connect and submit your paperwork, the better. It gives us more lead time to be able to set things up. And then going forward into other semesters, once you're already a University of Guelph student, you want to connect with SAS and request your accommodations as early in the semester as possible. There are certain procedures that you have to follow to set up certain accommodations. There are deadlines for some of those, and the best way to be aware of all those deadlines and not to miss any of them is to connect right in the beginning of the semester. So it should be something that you're doing as you're getting set up, as you're figuring out, okay, what are all my courses? Let me get my course outlines. Okay, semester has started. Okay, have I made my request for my SAS accommodations? That should definitely be a beginning of semester thing. Once you are already connected with us once, you do have to let us know every semester, hey, I'm in courses and I'm going to need some accommodations. That's because students do sometimes take semesters off, or they might be taking courses in a particular semester where they don't need their accommodations, so they don't connect with us in that semester. So we don't know unless you tell us that you need accommodations, and when you want to do that is as early in the semester as possible. Don't wait till something comes up that's a problem. You want to get registered before there's a problem so that you know how you're going to problem solve if you do run into an issue.
And just to add to that, Wendy, it is the students' responsibility to connect with us to access their accommodations. So it's up to you. So if you're in courses where maybe you don't need accommodations for that semester, it's still important to let us know that you're registered and you're connecting with us, even if you choose not to use accommodations for that term.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's also, if anybody's listening and they're thinking like, I don't know if SAS is for me, I do have one of those health concerns, or I have a learning disability, or I have ADHD. I'm not sure if I'm going to connect with SAS. I don't know if I'll need it or not. Our advice would be, please connect, do the process, submit documentation, come to an intake appointment, hear about what SAS does and how we can help. And then if you don't need anything, that's not a problem. You're not going to be obligated to, continue checking in with us. But then if something comes up that's unexpected and you do need SAS support, you've already done the initial stuff. You've already given us paperwork. We don't have to send you to go get documentation, which means that we can help you faster. So if you're kind of thinking, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to need SAS or not, please register anyway. And I would say that as well, in once you are a student and you're into a semester, even where you think like, yeah, these courses are pretty straightforward, I'm not going to need accommodations for these, request accommodations anyway on a just in case basis, because then again, if you get to week 6 and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is an accommodation related problem, you've already at least requested the accommodations, you've connected, and we can help you faster. Any other questions out there?
I think you're good to keep going, but I'll keep you posted.
All right, great. I think this is probably my last slide, or my second to last slide. So other course selection issues. And this is basically a slide for, this is the course selection related stuff that if you ask your SAS advisor, we will say, happy to help by sending you elsewhere. Okay, so these are issues like, which courses do I take? How do I arrange or sequence courses? So again, back to our conversation of, if my magic number is 3 and I'm going to take 3 courses in every semester, which 3 out of these 5 that you're telling me are suggested should I take? That's an academic program counseling office question. If you get into a semester and you think like, okay, I started with 4, I thought that was going to be fine, I'm feeling really overwhelmed, or this course isn't going so great, I think I need to drop it, but what's going to happen to my academic progress? Because, what if I drop Chem 1040 in my first semester and I'm supposed to take 1050 in my second semester, but I'm not going to have the prerequisite? What do I do? That's a program counselor question, right? So it's not that we don't want to be helpful, it's that we want to make sure that you're getting the right information. And there are so many programs with so many different requirements on campus that we're going to send you to the experts for that. If you want to switch to an academic program, switch to a different academic program, your program counseling office would be the ones to talk to. And you probably already have this information, but just as an overview, when I speak about your program counseling office, if you are studying for a Bachelor of Arts degree, your program counseling office is the BA counseling office, Bachelor of Arts program counseling office. If you're studying for a Bachelor of Commerce degree, there is a Bachelor of Commerce program counseling office. So when I say your academic program counseling office, that's connected to which degree are you studying for, and this is the office where you get your academic guidance from. Okay. And then this is the last slide here. So again, if you have questions now, feel free to enter them in the chat. If you have questions, tomorrow or next week or something like that, you can feel free to contact us using this information. So our telephone number and extension, and then the email address as well. Now, I've put the SAS intake address here because at this point, for most people, your questions are going to be intake related. So questions about documentation, questions about the new student intake form, questions about getting started with SAS. Once you are a student who's already registered with SAS and we've got your paperwork and started your file, you're probably just going to email either directly to your advisor, or if it's something more general, you may email just the main SAS account, which is just sas@uofguelph.ca. But at this point, your questions are probably best directed to intake, so that's the address there.
So I just want to, I will leave everything open for some more questions, and Wendy, I'll interrupt a few times, but I just want to let everyone know that this video, this session is being recorded, and if you've missed anything, you can go back and watch it again on the Start Online website. So that's where you got to this link. So just keep that in mind if you need to go back and rewatch any parts of this.
Right, as we continue to leave the chat open for questions, I just want to say thank you very much to everyone for joining us today. Thank you to Tanya and to Patty in the background for being my tech support so that all I had to worry about was just sitting here and talking. That works best. You can tell I like to talk.
Wendy, just to, I know you've mentioned this, but where would students find out who their program counselor is?
Patty, did I get you to get that link, or do you have that link? So there is a link that I provide to students a lot in email. I think all the advisors do. We have something called the Undergraduate Academic Information Center, and it's basically just a collection of useful academic information. So who do I contact for? And one of those things is the program counselor list. So I usually get students to bookmark it, and if I'm ever saying contact your program counseling office, I'll say, if you're not sure who your program counseling office is, here's a link. Patty, if you have that or could grab it, that would be great. Sorry if I put you on the spot there.
No, we're just trying to get it into the chat so that people can access it for their program counselor. There is also the session that is tomorrow where you'll have the opportunity by degree program to connect with program counselors around the directions for course selection. So they'll be able to provide that information as well.
You also will have, I believe it's still called the same thing, your handbook for new students will sort of clarify, if you're studying this subject, this is your program counseling office. And for some of you, you've come into a particular degree program, maybe the BA degree program, and you're not sure what you want to study yet. So right now you haven't declared an area of concentration or an area of specialization. That's okay. It's still going to be, if you're a BA student, you're going to talk to the same program counseling office, whether you know that you're going to be a BA in history or a BA in anthropology, or whether you're just not sure yet, but it's going to be one of the Bachelor of Arts programs. And the other thing to keep in mind while we're talking about degree programs is you're not stuck. You're never stuck, right? You come in first semester, you think you know exactly what you want to do. You get into the courses and you go, oh, I don't like any of this. Maybe I'm in the wrong program. That is an absolutely fine realization to come to in your first semester, second semester, even beyond that. You're not stuck. You can switch. There will be different rules about what you need to do to switch depending on, if you're a BA student, you came in psychology and you went, I don't like psychology, but sociology is pretty cool. That's an easy switch. It's just paperwork. Whereas if you came in a Bachelor of Commerce degree and then you went, I don't think I want to do business. What about the sciences? Now you're switching from the commerce degree program to the Bachelor of Science degree program. So that's actually a little bit more of an involved process. Still all possible, just more of an involved process.
Maybe Wendy, would you be able to, I guess, clarify the difference between a program counselor and an academic advisor?
All right. You're talking faculty advisors there, Tanya?
That's what the question that came through is the difference between a program counselor and an academic advisor. And I'm thinking the academic advisor tends to be within a particular major as opposed to the program counselor. So I think that's what the question is referring to.
So you may have, whoever asked that question, you may have encountered a situation where we're just using language interchangeably in a way that is pretty confusing. So when I'm talking about your program counseling office, I'm talking about the office that, every single BA student is going to get their academic advice about their BA degree from the BA counseling office. So the BA counseling office, whether you're taking a Bachelor of Arts in English or history or psychology or sociology or anthropology, you're all going to talk to the same office to understand, first of all, what are my requirements for my specialization of psychology or anthropology or whatever have you, and then what are the other courses that I need to take to make up my Bachelor of Arts degree? Because I can't just take, 40 anthropology courses and call it a degree. I don't even think there are 40 anthropology courses on campus. So your academic program counseling office and your program counselor are the ones that help you understand, how does my entire Bachelor of Arts or my entire Bachelor of Science or my entire Bachelor of Commerce degree fit together? You will also have faculty advisors. A faculty advisor is specific to a particular program specialization, like psychology or English or sociology or chemistry or physics. And so those are professors in those particular departments that have expertise on what are the courses that are offered for chemistry students specifically or for English students specifically. Now, the confusing thing is you may hear both a program counselor and a faculty advisor referred to as academic advisor. So a lot of times the difference depends on context, right? And it depends on, well, what are the jobs of those different types of advisors? So if we're talking about a program counselor, that's someone whose job it is to know how your entire degree in a particular program, like Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Commerce, fits together. Where a faculty advisor, their job is to have in-depth knowledge on English courses or chemistry courses or whatever their area of advising is. And that also can get confusing because when we're talking about SAS, we talk about advisors as well. And you may see sometimes from other folks on campus, they'll say, oh, talk to your academic advisor, and they actually mean us, which is confusing because usually academic advisor, you're talking to program counseling office or a faculty advising office. So it can sometimes be confusing, and the clarity is in the context. What kind of help do you need? If you're needing help understanding what are my requirements for my Bachelor of Arts degree, that's going to be your program counseling office. If you have a specific question about an English course, you might want to talk to an English faculty advisor. If you have questions about your accommodations, that's going to be your student accessibility services advisor.
Thanks, Wendy. I know there was a couple of questions in the chat with regards to orientation. So just to kind of highlight that, at the end of June, students who have communicated with us and submitted documentation and new student intake form will receive a link to our events website, and all of the sessions that are taking place over the summer will be listed there. We have a combination of in-person and virtual events. So some of the virtual sessions will be taking place in July and early August. Then our Start Accessible programming starts August 23rd, and that's a series of sessions that covers a number of topics with regards to SAS and accommodations and supports that we provide. There's also a session there for parents, so if you want your parents to find out a little bit about what they can do, they can attend that session as well. And then we have an in-person 2-day sessions on September 1st and 2nd, which is right before move-in and orientation week starts for the campus as a whole. And that's a great opportunity to learn how to, the specifics on how to access your accommodations and set everything up, as well as meet with your advisor, connect with different resources that are associated with SAS. So it's a great opportunity to make those connections as well. And in most cases, students will have had their SAS advisor appointment prior to that. So your advisor will be able to give you some information on what sessions you might want to pay particular attention to. Okay.
Thank you, Tanya. You did that much more fluently than I would have.
So just any last minute questions before we end our event? I know Wendy already thanked everyone for joining us. Just one thing, I know you've said it already, Wendy, a few times, and we talk about the importance of that new student intake form. It is important to fill that out. Even if you don't have your documentation, you can start the process by filling out that new student intake form to help us be able to communicate with you. It's a way of telling us that you're a student who is hoping to access accommodations through our office, and then we can get the process working. Okay. So again, just want to thank everyone for joining us today. Wendy, any final thoughts or comments for everyone before we close the session?
If you hear nothing else that I said today, hear this, and that is the University of Guelph campus is a campus with a lot of people on it that want to help you if you're struggling, but you have to ask. That is the bottom line. Like, don't be out there struggling and not say anything to anybody, because if you don't say something, you won't get the help. But please, if you're struggling, if you have a question or a concern, if you just need some input, please ask. There are a lot of helpful people on this campus. There are a lot of helpful people at SAS, but we count on you to speak up and put your hand up and say, hey, I'd like some help. I'd like some input. Please do that, okay?
So we're just keeping the chat open for a few more minutes. But again, thank you very much, Wendy, for all of your information, and thank you for asking your questions. We hope you got your questions answered, and please be sure to attend the session tomorrow as well for more information on course selection and what courses to take from the program counselors. And if you do have other SAS questions after today, all the contact information is there on the screen, so please feel free to reach out and connect with us. Okay, thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your day.